Welcome, everyone. I have a special guest today. We're going to be having an engaging conversation talking about the reality of pornography in our world, and if you're in its clutches, how can we attain freedom? Steve Pokorny, the founder of Freedom Coaching, is with me today. Steve, great to be with you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Christopher. An honor to be with you today.
Steve, tell our listeners a little bit about you, about your journey, about your own struggles, and then we'll talk later about how Freedom Coaching was born and what it's all about. But let's learn a little bit about you.
Sure. So I grew up in a family, father, mother, brother, didn't have a dog. I know that's sad to you. And I have two dogs now, two beautiful labs, and so life is good. But all of that would change when I was 5 years old. This is 1985. My father fought in Vietnam, and he was a lawyer, and he believed somewhere along the lines to provide for his family, it had to be material. And so he wanted to get rich quick. And I think there's a temptation in all of us men to do that. And so my father found a way that if you bet the house on the stock market, if the deal went well, then we would be taken care of financially. Well, he thought the deal was lost at some point. So he thought the way in which to take care of us, because he's a veteran, would be by killing himself.
Mercy,
so
Jesus.
he went into, and he went into the garage, closed the garage door, turned on the engine. And 30 minutes later, my mom pulled him out of that situation, but his short-term memory was gone. And so I grew up in a situation where my father was in a nursing home and not really knowing my father at all. And I empathize dearly with those who are growing up in what can be called a fatherless world in many ways, right? You and I, Christopher, shall we say, are the exception to the rule in some cases where the father is just absent. And I grew up in that situation. And so having that lack of identity, of having that fatherly presence, of walking there. My mom, to her credit, tried to bring other men into my life. My grandfather was involved. He was a vet from World War II and did the best he could, but emotionally, to connect emotionally, that wasn't his background, right? I had my neighbor across the street. He taught me how to ride my bike, right? Thank God for that. And Big Brothers, Big Sisters, the program, I had several of those throughout the years. They helped to a degree, but without the father, there was this aching, this hurt, this gulf in me. And so I grew up, even though my mom would get me into counseling to try to deal with this stuff, I remember writing in my journal, I should just kill myself, like father, like son.
Mercy.
That was the message that I received. And a lot of dark clouds in my life, metaphorically, shall I say. And so fast forward to when I was 17, doctors discovered my father, who had been in a nursing home. And just painting the picture, I would see him every once in a while. He'd come home for a little while. And to my mother's credit, stayed married. She stayed married through that entire situation. So there was a witness to marriage that was implicitly implied there. And but I never could connect with my father. It was just really awkward. Couldn't really understand him. He knew me from before the accident, but again, I'm a young boy. I'm trying to develop. I'm going into my teenage years. There's no real connection.
Steve, let me interject here. Can I interject? That I've known you a long time, and I don't know that I was aware of this aspect of your story, or if I was, I had forgotten that this. How could this not form and shape you in very deep, profound, and painful ways? You were 5 years old when your dad tried to kill himself?
I was.
Mercy. What role is faith playing at this stage in your life? Was your mom a faithful woman? Was your dad Catholic? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So my mom was Catholic. I grew up Catholic, and never really learned how to pray. We went to Sunday Mass. I still remember, I think it was Ash Wednesday. I went to Mass by myself. My mom was working, she was a school teacher. And it was like a Wednesday evening Mass. And I went, my mom was coming back from work. I'm like, I went to Mass all by myself. And my mom's like, well, it's not a holy day of obligation. You didn't have to go. So, like being the legalistic, I'm trying to do those things. But it wasn't, it was something we did on Sunday, but it wasn't really inherent here. And to, my mom's credit, right? And I give props to any single mom out there who was trying to just make it through the day for whatever reason. Her husband's not in the picture, right? That's a very difficult situation. And to my mom's credit, trying to keep this together, she actually would be involved with another man, but to my knowledge, like she was faithful to her wedding vows to in there. So somewhere along the line, that message was conveyed there, but it was kind of a rote thing. That's where my faith life was. It wasn't until later that would kind of come alive.
And in this time of growing up, how aware were you that your dad had tried to kill himself? Was this a story that was openly told? Was this something you found out later? Do you have a specific memory of being 5 when this happened? How was this dealt with in your family? And were there siblings here as well? I don't know that side of the story.
Sure. So great question, Christopher. I distinctly remember, I think it was either 5 or 6. So my birthday's in August, and I distinctly remember waiting to blow out the candles. And thinking about what I want to, wish for. Part of it was to pray for Voltron. I really wanted the Voltron action figures, but when you don't tell mom what you want for your birthday, you're probably not getting it. Okay,
Right.
So I never talked to her, so that was silly. So kids, ask your parents, tell your parents explicitly what you want for Christmas and your birthday. So that's a side note. But I also I definitely remembered, God, just bring my father back, bring my dad back. And I distinctly remember, like, and that's another neighbor. We had some good men surrounding me. It was interesting how God provided that. Our next door neighbor, his name was Jim, cool dude. I remember him distinctly driving me to school one day, and this kind of hope rising up within me, like maybe kids will see me with this guy and think this is my dad, and I'm gonna fit in. So like that longing for acceptance, right? And especially looking for that masculine role model, wanting to experience that, just was very much present there. So as much as, as I said, the other ones trying to fill that gap just couldn't be met because my father wasn't there.
What about siblings? Did you have siblings, Steve?
Yeah, I have one blood brother, and I think he's 3.5 years older than me, and so this is happening when he's 9, right? And trying to deal with this, right? And I think my brother, to his credit, my brother's a very good man. He is, and but I think this is something I don't know exactly where he's at in that journey, but I certainly have been more overt in seeking that healing there. And I know that I think there's been healing that's happened there, but for my brother and I, it was kind of like, well, it's my brother, my mom, and ourselves. This is the world we're living in, and we're trying to make a good go of it.
So tell me how this shaped you in terms of leading you to your faith. Later, you would come to a lively faith. You would discover John Paul II's theology of the body. You would experience freedom in your own life, and you would want to bring it to others. Connect the dots for us, how you went from that traumatic childhood experience. You're growing up, your teen years, you're looking for role models, you're looking for father figures. At some point, I'm sure you are exposed to porn yourself. You fall into that whole trap, and lead us then to the discovery of John Paul's theology of the body.
Sure. So I'll hit some blips on here. So it was 17. Doctors discovered my dad was losing a lot of weight, ran some tests, developed brain and lung cancer. So my father, he got moved to a hospice. This is in Cleveland, Ohio. And I sat in the room and I was just real with him. I said, Dad, you left me. You walked out on Mom. You weren't there for Brian. You abandoned us. And remember, my father, I couldn't understand him, so his eyes, for the first time, kind of cleared up, and he said, "I know." And that was his way of saying, "I'm sorry." And I was able to start forgiving my father for the first time. And 3 weeks later, less than 3 feet away, I lost my father for the second time. So this wound is here. Now, obviously, to understand the next part of the story, we actually go back to seventh grade. Seventh grade is the infamous year I got busted for shoplifting. My grandparents bailed me out of that. But it was also the year in which I got exposed to pornography for a big one. Actually, it was the year prior. It was like Satan dropping a bag of goodies about 8 doors down on this street, a bag of ripped up images of pornography, and hardcore pornography, in fact. And I finding the lottery, I couldn't keep to myself, told a neighborhood kid, and he's like, in my basement, we're going through this. He's like, "This is so exciting. I'll give you $20 for it."
Wow.
So I was a porn peddler, shall we say, at 12 years of age.
I didn't know my gosh. What I was doing. And where you're 12 years old when you discover porn, did it become, so you were born in what, 1980?
1979. Mm-hmm.
79. So, okay. So we're in the early 90s now. The internet is not yet a widespread phenomenon. So this is the same kind of porn I was exposed to as a kid, was through magazines. Later on, did it become a full-blown addiction in your own life?
So it certainly would become a compulsion. It was at seventh grade with another childhood friend who had these videos that his mom and dad, they would watch these. We got exposed to there, and we're watching this, and I'm intrigued by this. There's excitement, clearly. I'm seeing women and men doing things that never even considered. So this attraction is there, Christopher, but this ugliness is beginning to grow. Right. And what it is that wall of shame begins to come up. So then around this time into high school, that's when the internet hits. That's when starting to the slow download speeds and wanting to watch this. And the interest is there, but the ugliness. I'm an extrovert. I'm out at parties and I like being with people. But what ends up happening is that guilt, that shame, that self-hatred is hitting me. And I kind of want to say to people, just leave me alone. Go away. I want to go into my happy place. So I literally, this is the start of becoming two men and being torn in that.
Connect the dots for us. A lot of people don't realize how related our childhood traumas are with trying to medicate through pornography. Connect the dots between the trauma of your dad trying to kill himself, your dad being in a nursing home, having an absent father, then later losing your father. How is that related to the way you were trying to feed or fill up some hole in your soul?
Yeah, great question. So it can be said, like, in what we say in freedom coaching, all of the pornography use, all the unchaste behavior, that's a cover job. It's a big cover job for all the deep wounds that are going on here. And until those are addressed with a heart of compassion, where that's actually told, a safe place to be able to share that, right? Then that is going to be the underlying hurts that are going on there. And again, why traumas are so devastating to us. In a certain sense, Christopher, it's not the activity that what happened. It's the emotions and the memories and the memories that those emotions get burned into our brains and our hearts and into our bodies that become so crippling. And so for me, right, I was trapped in this. This was not discussed. My one conversation about, you always, a frequent thing that you say in some of your seminars, Christopher, is like, how many of you have open, honest, healthy discussions and repeated conversations about human sexuality growing up? My one conversation with my mom, because she found us with another friend. Again, you're seeing a pattern here of so many young boys not having this education. So we were doing Mad Libs, but we're doing dirty Mad Libs and putting all these different things here. My mom finds it out. She sits me down and says, "All right, so what do you know about sex?" My response, "A lot." And that's it. That was our conversation, Christopher.
Wow.
So
how old were you at that point?
Dearth here. Probably like 11 or 12.
Okay.
This is the formation. Raised on pornography. raised on the pornified vision of life. That was me. So so there's no outlet to be able to talk about these things. Hormones hit, right? And I have this obviously a natural desire to an affinity for the opposite sex. I'm interested, but I don't know how to connect. I don't know how to relate. I've been damaged by this in just wanting to connect on a friendship level. I'm not sure how to do that. And the message I'm getting, women are mere objects. They're there for my gratification. That's the message I'm getting. And so I'm again being torn asunder here, and it's becoming deeper and deeper and deeper into high school and beyond that.
Yeah, I think you're putting your finger on the real problem of what pornography does to our minds and our hearts. We tend to think, some people will say, oh, come on, I'm not hurting anybody. What's really the problem here? But the problem here is we are being programmed to think of other human beings as objects for our selfish pleasure. We are being trained and programmed psychologically, spiritually, and even in our physiological reactions to treat other human beings as objects of use. And the goal of life is to learn how to love. But when we're being trained to use people rather than love people, we are setting ourselves up for disaster here. How did this play itself out in your relationships with other people? I'm sure as a teenager, you're getting to the point of wanting to date, you're wanting to enter into relationships, but when your frame is one of treating the opposite sex as a thing rather than seeing a woman as a person, how did that impact your relationships?
Oh, it impacted poorly. I mean, I think you take obviously the natural progression of feeling awkward in one's body. I think that was the progression for a long time of not feeling comfortable in my own skin, because I have these desires. I don't know what to do with them. And obviously, I'm trying to be Catholic during this time. I would go to frequent confession. My frequent weeks were feel tempted, look at pornography, masturbate, feel guilty, go to confession, hear the words of forgiveness, but in a certain sense can't forgive myself. That became the pattern in high school. And so obviously relationships in high school, when we can't share truly ourselves here with another person, and that's why I think pornography is so devastating to all relationships. It puts a mask and a veneer over getting real with people. And I lived there for a long, long time. So those early relationships, I mean, I was taught what's a language, right? If you love someone, love by mere feelings, then you express this sexually, right? By the grace of God, I was preserved from, I didn't have sex before marriage, I didn't have intercourse before marriage, but I was not a chaste man. I mean, there were opportunities in high school with certain girlfriends, things that were done that I'm not happy about, things that especially I would say, and I've repented of this, and I pray for these women, turned them off to the truth about who a man really can be, who is ultimately to be Christ in service there. So those wounds didn't just go away, but began getting festered, and it didn't stay in the privacy of my own bedroom. I began to affect the lives of others.
So how did you discover John Paul II's theology of the body? Take us to that moment in your journey.
Sure. So it actually was a friend. Her name was Ellen. Is Ellen, I should say. Her name is Ellen Winnie. So Ellen, if you're watching this, thank you for your yes. Somehow she got hands on a cassette tape, and this is summer of 2002 actually. And I'd been dealing with this in college. I was actually in seminary. I was just about getting out of seminary. And she gave this to me. I had been big into apologetics, explaining the faith in a logical way. And she said, listen to it. I'm like, what is it? Just listen to it. So 4 months later, I pop it on as I'm getting ready for work. I'm teaching a very hellish year of high school theology. I know nothing about Jesus Christ and scripture, no love for teaching, and the kids hated me. It's a brutal year, Christopher. So, and ironically, this is October, and I think I was teaching on, as we had set out the scriptures, I'm teaching on the book of Genesis. I think that's what's going on.
Uh-huh.
I'm shaving. Those days are over, by the way. And I hear this crazy guy by the name of Christopher West in Austin, Texas. I still remember, you go, whoop, and I'm in San Antonio, Texas. So to greet people. And my jaw hits the floor because I'm hearing what I've been looking for my whole flipping life. That these desires in me, like there's an answer to them. There's an antidote to the wounds that I've taken in, and these lines that I'm not lost, or the lost shell that a place that I'm in. There's actually a path forward to get found, to be found, to be received, right? So and then the question arises, Christopher, what do I do? What do I do with this? Right.
Yeah.
So it would be fast forwarding. I would go to Franciscan University in Steubenville, and I'm being moved, in fact, by going to daily mass, and I'm hearing at mass the beautiful music it was sung there, praise and worship, and like the Father singing to me and receiving this. And it was one particular Wednesday after that, I'm praying after mass. I'd received the Eucharist, moved to gratitude for what Christ is doing, and then it hits me. It's not just Jesus, it's the Father. It's the one that I thought had walked out on me, abandoned me, and just left me. He, like the old poem, "The Footprints on the Sand." He'd been carrying me, and all he wanted me to do, Christopher, was to climb up into his lap, to be held, and it's enough. It's enough. And I heard for the first time in my life, "You, Stephen, are my well-beloved son, whom I'm well pleased." Me? You're pleased with me? Do you know how much using I've done? Do you know how much lying I've done with my body? And yes, pleased with you. Just come to me. I want all of it. And that is a scary proposition, Christopher, because I've been hiding for so long, so much hiding. And he says, "Come out, be with me." And in that, as tears are coming down my cheeks, and it happens, boom, 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 boom. These chains hit the floor. This real, living, palpable experience of a liberation from lust. This desire to want to use my sisters is transformed into a desire to want to serve them. And Christopher, that would last for about 4 months, and I'm amazed here. But something would happen. Go ahead.
All right, I want to press into this whole idea that there's another way to experience our sexual desires. Most people think, and this is the way I thought before I discovered John Paul II's teaching, that we will only have two choices with our sexual desires, indulge them or repress them. And if those are the only two options, well, repression looks more holy. And this is why I think so many Christians have deep-seated sexual problems. We become neurotic here because we think the path to holiness, again in quotes, is to repress. I'm not going to think about that. I'm not going to think about that. But you're holding out this idea that you discovered, and I discovered also in John Paul's Theology of the Body, that indulge and repress are not the only two options. That Christ came into the world not to condemn those with disordered sexual desires, but to restore the original order of sexual desire. So talk into that a little bit, Steve. What is this original order? What is this original plan that God has for our sexual desires? Why did it go wrong? How did it go wrong? And how does Christ redeem it for us?
Beautiful. Okay, so you want me to give salvation history in a minute or 2 minutes? Let's do it. So, so in the beginning, God creates man and woman, beautiful, whole, holy, meant to express this. In obviously Adam, before Eve comes on the planet, he knows he's created body and soul. His body is good. It's created to be I like to say, a tattoo of the soul. That expression, they're intimately united. We can't separate them. He is unique and unrepeatable. He is utterly loved by the Father, and he knows it, balls to bones. He's completely saturated in that reality. He knows he has freedom not to do whatever he wants, but freedom to choose the good, and he's prompted by the good, and he's called to love freely, totally, faithfully, and fruitfully, the way that all of us long. If we're honest, we want this. Eve comes on the planet, and there's total, complete union. And when he sees Eve, he doesn't simply see body parts. When Eve sees Adam, she doesn't simply see his 401k plan. She sees the whole person here, right? And in this seeing one another, this is the divine vision. there's this piece of the interior gaze. And maybe when we're hearing this, there's that, that hurts. That hasn't been my experience, right? I've seen the bumper stickers of, animals don't leave people. Oh gosh. And for those who express that, right, it seems easier because people are so complicated. People have this thing called sin and wounds and hurt people repeatedly, and especially in our own homes. And some of us, we're heading into Christmas soon, and we're maybe for that dread and the foreboding of the Christmas parties, and we're gonna have to get into that conversation and rehash that memory. But that's not what it was in the beginning. Sin enters in. Sin breaks everything. It's the beautiful harmony in the orchestra that God has given to us has now been utterly shattered. And it's disjointed music that we don't know how to play anymore. We find that all of our instruments, if they're not broken and shattered, they're way out of tune, and we don't know how to make beautiful music with others, right? And we think this is the place we're in, and especially regarding sexual sin. So, we call it sin. That's that missing the mark, that the wounds that we experience when it's the genuine desire to love that's gone awry. And we hurt each other. And especially, I would say, this is the heresy of our days, the sexual heresy, both the noun of not knowing who we are as male and female, and then because we don't know who we are, just like myself, my identity, I had no clue, then we go and we try to live out our bodies and our sexuality in ways to try to satisfy this deep thirst in ways that can't do it.
I want to press into I want to press into this image you shared, Steve, which I really like, that in the beginning, they were made to make beautiful music, but with original sin, our instruments are now out of tune. It's a great image in the idea of when we don't have a vision that our instruments can be put back in tune. We think our only options are play out of tune, or that out of tune kind of hurts my ears, so I'm going to throw away the instruments altogether. No, we can. With God's grace, we can retune our instrument and make, once again, beautiful, beautiful music. But it's not a simple journey. And I think here I'm a guitarist, at least to some extent. I play guitar, and when you're tuning a guitar, you're going to go sharp, and then you're going to go flat, and then a little less sharp, and then a little less flat until you find that right? Until your instrument is in tune. And I've often used that as a metaphor for our own journey into wholeness. What was that journey like for you? And at some point along this way of tuning your own instrument, you have a calling on your heart to serve others, and you found Freedom Coaching. Take us through that journey to the establishment of Freedom Coaching.
Sure, and I just want to make it very clear to all those who are hearing this, the journey is not over. There's always deeper healing. He always wants to go deeper. He's the hound of heaven. He wants to go deeper and deeper. So, but that moment there, expressed before, right, knowing that I'm loved, knowing how palpable, tangible experience of freedom, that lasted for 4 months. And then like Peter, who took his eye off of Christ, sink back into the septic tank. And what he was doing, because God's not satisfied with surface. He wants us to go deep. He wants the real Pokorny. He wants the real Christopher West. He wants all of us to get real with him, because it's naked without shame, metaphorically speaking, shall we say, right? I am totally open and vulnerable. It's a place, if you do not become like little children, and that's what little children are, you cannot participate in this kingdom. You cannot be a part of me, right? And we're afraid of that, to expose that. So for myself, it was a process of several years, and continue to go deeper into my faith, going to adoration frequently, seeing the naked Christ exposed to me, and I can expose my heart to him, and to go eyeball to eyeball with love incarnate, love poured out for us. And so many years of just aches here. I mean, the amount of, I use some choice words in adoration. And I think if we've not gotten real in our prayer life, God's not afraid of the bad words and bringing us in there. He wants us either hot or cold. Don't go lukewarm. And so I had to be that, but also led to right? I had to be to also three elements that were significant on my journey. One was called theophostic prayer, which is, in essence, it's where the emotions we have are like smoke that lead to a fire. And so some deep healing prayer, some visualization, there was healing that happened there. Second was something called intensive trauma therapy. It's writing and drawing. And it was on, we processed about 21 of 35 traumas in 1 week. I went all in. And
Wow.
on that Wednesday, Christopher, was the first time. And I think my traumatologist said she had never seen such a long trauma. It was 50 pages of drawings that I put up there. I finally went into my sexual woundedness, finally got real, and I was able to talk in a safe place with somebody. And I walked out of that office and I knew things were different. I knew, like, this is not the mountaintop experience that we go on
Hmm.
retreat and come off, and by Friday we're back at drinking from the septic tank. No, I was like, this is different. And then especially the third element was, and I think this is especially with theology of the body, because I'd been learning theology of the body. I'd been studying it. I was blessed to go to Rome. I was blessed to go to this John Paul II Institute in DC. And Dr. David Schindler, who just passed away, was our dean. God rest his soul. A lot of good education in there, but it was especially through theology of the body that the John Paul II Institute especially highlights. Helped me to see the body correctly. And I say this is a key point. I was led to especially the church's beautiful vision on the body, especially in art, where the body is exposed appropriately. I know that I've had the privilege to talk with Bill Donahue, and you obviously working with him very closely, being able to speak with him on our own podcast, and what he's doing now with the podcast there to expose the wealth that the church has, because their nature abhors a vacuum, right? If we
Yep.
who have been the caretakers of art, that's what Christianity is supposed to be, and our very lives are to be the artisans reflecting the divine artist. And but obviously these works of art, when we have these works of art, when we have a counterpoint here that is genuine beauty, pornography can't hold a candle to this.
So let
There's
me
no
speak to
power
that,
there because, yeah,
Steve. I want to press into that because you're hitting on a very important principle in our healing, that we overcome evil with good, right? Nature abhors a vacuum, as you said. When we turn to pornography, it's like we need to drink. There's a thirst that we need to satisfy there, but it's like we're drinking salt water, right? There's a semblance of satisfying the thirst, but there's so much salt in the water that it ends up creating this cycle where I need more and more and more, and you end up killing yourself from the poisoning of the salt in your blood system. But the solution is never to think, I shouldn't be thirsty. The solution is to take my thirst to pure water. And so you're talking about this tradition of sacred art in the Catholic Church, and Michelangelo would be a great example of this, and the Sistine Chapel, right, which John Paul II described as the shrine to the theology of the human body. And he said Michelangelo allowed himself to be guided by those evocative words in the book of Genesis where we read about nakedness without shame. So what's the difference between the nakedness in the Sistine Chapel and the nakedness of pornography? How do you help the people you coach? How do you help them make that distinction?
sure. This is a much longer conversation. Let's make it simple. So, we can say this, that beauty itself is not in the eye of the beholder. We may have preference to things, but let me draw from St. Thomas Aquinas. There's three hallmarks of beauty. First, and if you can remember red, white, and blue, you can remember this. So first is radiance. Does it radiate beauty? Is it connected to God? Is it showing a transcendence to something more? Second, is there wholeness? Is image itself, and especially even the human person, John Paul makes this very clear, especially in Love and Responsibility, that the human person, the human body, no matter how deep we go into the matters of sexuality as male and female, is worthy of public, shall we say, veneration, to show that. Is it whole there? And if there's showing man and woman together, is it trying, as much as art can do, show the relationship there? And then third is going to be balance, red, white, blue, balance. So this can have to do with the image itself, but also beyond it. What's the context? Is what's being demonstrated in the art itself, is it in accord with what we can perceive to be in reality? And that's where I think pornography especially falls flat, and why it's so not satisfying is at the end of the day, it's bankrupt. It's not real. What we want is real. We want the realness here. And you raise such an important point, Christopher, is that thirst. We have to know that thirst. But I think and then go to where that thirst can satisfy. But even beforehand, are we aware that the thirst is there? Because so many of us, I think, are so terrified to actually open that space up to say, I'm thirsty. By God, I'm so thirsty. And to cry out with that hurt, because I think and this has been one of the wounds, especially we're seeing in the church right now, especially with a lot of the sexual abuse, which has really turned a lot of people off to Catholicism, because we've been hiding this. Even most recently, a client that I'm talking with, his spiritual director just mentioned, and again, we don't ever glorify sin, but if you're in a relationship, right, he's in a very serious relationship, and they share everything. And his spiritual director is saying, don't share any of that stuff. And I'm saying, this is how we've gotten ourselves into trouble here in the first place. So it's not that we air it everywhere. We don't go on YouTube and glorify the sin. That's not what we're saying here. But in safe locations, right, we've got to get real about this, right? Is this not why, in many cases, in many spaces, people are leaving in droves to go to evangelical churches? Is because the evangelical churches are at least being real. Are they missing the full meal? Yeah, they got a hamburger at least. And when I'm starving, man, well, at least I'm getting some sort of feeding here. But the truth is, if we can get real with the naked Christ to bear our souls, he has the best food for us. The source and summit of the faith is the Eucharist, the body and blood of Christ, and it satisfies. He satisfies everything. But, Christopher, if we've had this wall of shame, the guilt, the self-hatred, the brokenness here, no matter the best homilies here, if we don't get real with that and let other people in, then we're not going to be able to hear the beautiful music there, because we think it's too painful. And I say to all those hearing this, be not afraid. Open that wound up, because he does not condemn you. He calls you to embrace your greatness.
And isn't this exactly what you're doing in Freedom Coaching? You're helping people get real with God, let the masks fall, expose that shame, not to be shamed all the more. And I think that's our fear, isn't it? We bury this stuff because we're afraid if I expose it, people are going to pour, salt on my wound. But the encounter with Jesus is never salt on our wounds. It's oil on our wounds. But those wounds need to be exposed and touched by love. I'm imagining this is exactly what you do in your coaching. If I were to come to you for coaching, what would you walk me through? Like session 1, you and I are sitting down in a coaching session. What do we do? What happens?
Sure. Meeting 1, obviously, in all of our work, we code it in prayer. But to make this very clear, this is not a pray to wear thing. We are dealing with some trauma things. There's things that you have to work through these things. You can hear all the beautiful things about theology of the body, which is integrated into the work we're doing. But if you're not in a place to actually hear that beautiful music, well, then you just can't receive it, right? The message is received, the mode of the receiver, as we say, right? So I want to know first and foremost, Christopher, I'll treat you like a client. I want to know why you're here. Why are you here? What's driving you here?
Yeah, I'm here because I'm stuck and I want to get out. I want to be free. I'm stuck in these patterns and habits of indulgence, and I'm powerless to change.
Amen. Amen. And I want to say thank you for being here, Christopher. In the space here, this is a safe place. This is a place where you're going to be fully received here. I have no room to condemn anyone. God knows it. And I'm going to have to stand before the judgment seat and actually, how did I go and treat those that I've been closest to, starting with my wife and kids, but especially here in this moment. So we want to walk through, and I want to talk through this. So then and then we launch in right after that, Christopher, with a list of homework. In fact, we don't tiptoe in the pool of freedom. We want to push them in. They're going to learn how to swim in that. And if they've been swimming, shall we say, in a septic tank, we've got to do some detox. into fresh water and begin that process. So the first homework assignment out the box, if you're thinking about maybe I got this issue or somebody I know, and maybe you want to get a jump in on the work that we do, start with a list of 100 items you're thankful for. Okay. Here's a key thing of life. We cannot be both blasted and grateful at the same time. What am I talking about? Well, blasted, bored, lonely, hungry, angry, apathetic, stressed, tired, turned on, emotional, depressed. A mouthful. That's why we say blasted. Okay. I dare you.
Wait. Walk through that again. Walk through that again.
Bored, lonely, hungry, 2 A's now. Apathetic and angry, stressed, 2 T's, tired, turned on, emotional or overly emotional, and depressed. Okay.
Huh. Yeah.
That covers pretty much the gamut. That's we've thought through this. And I dare you, try to be genuinely really grateful and blasted at the same time. You're probably going to give yourself a migraine. Okay. Why? Because this is built into us. The source and summit of our faith is gratitude. If we go back to Adam in the garden, right? When Adam and Eve eat the fruit, right? The consequences are given out. They're given over to the evil one, the serpent, and he's told to eat dirt. What was Adam made of? He's made of dirt. So in fact, he becomes, when he sins, snake food. So the way for us to prevent becoming snake food, we have to bring in gratitude. And again, I would challenge all of you, especially as the holidays are coming up, Christmas parties, and with families, when the tensions start coming in, just pause yourself, take a deep breath. What are 5 things I'm thankful for right now, even about this person
Oh, we're frozen. We've had an internet. Oh, now we're back. Your internet connection was delayed there. You were right on the point where you said the 5 people. What did you say next?
Or 5. So as you're in those difficult moments, thank you for that. You're in those difficult moments, and see, life gets interrupted. This is a perfect reality. Stop, pause, interrupt yourself with 5 gratitudes, even about this person here, and watch what happens with the way in which, okay, maybe they're not such a jerk. Okay, maybe they are a jerk, but I can love this jerk. Maybe I've been a jerk to them, and I can show a little compassion there. So list of homework here, and then what we're going to do right in that first meeting, Christopher, we're going to begin to dive into the history. And we're not counselors, we're coaches. And so what we want to do, I'm not interested in the what of the event. If I could avoid the details, I have a big imagination. I don't want to go there. It's ugly stuff, but it's a safe location. And where I want to focus on, and where we have a whole team of coaches, we focus on what the emotions were, especially before, during, and after the situation. Why before? Because there was life before the trauma. During is obviously, this is a very painful experience. And finally, I can start giving voice to the emotion. And afterward shows, I survived. I made it. And that's what the brain wants to see. And because the brain, we crave order. And with trauma disorders us, right? So we're trying to bring things, just like dis-ease is a dis-ease of ourselves. We're trying to bring this into order. And then what can happen here, Christopher? This is where healing prayer comes in further meetings. This is where the truth about theology of the body comes in. Now that I'm beginning through grace, this dropping of this pride, the dropping of the wall of shame, I can start to receive myself back. I start to get myself back. And then what that does, because the way forward then is into the relationships with others. We don't do this on our own. So if we've been trying to, say we've had this issue of pornography or unchaste behavior for a long, long time, you've got to let other people in. So freedom coaching is a very legitimate way to begin that process to get myself back so I can enter back into a relationship with others.
Tell us some stories, Steve, of people who've come through your coaching program and what they've experienced.
Sure, I'll go through a few of them here. So first is a name. His name's James P0rn, and I can say his name because he went public with his testimony. This goes back to 2016. We worked together, and this is when I was a lone wolf. There now are other coaches, and he would literally, without sharing any details too much, he would literally be prowling the streets trying to find a way to act out on his lust. It was so deep, so entrenched in there. And this is one of the things he said after our our prosody said, I believe the struggles that come with compulsive pornography use can only be defeated by arresting our desire in the gifts God lays before us, gifts necessary to help us. These gifts include truth and true love for ourselves and others, especially those we hold dear. Freedom coaching and theology of the body's approach, combined with its real-life challenges and even a brief study of the hormonal and chemical differences between lust and love, and how these affect real-world perceptions, combine these healing gifts from God to lead to freedom. It's a beautiful thing. So I like to say, Christopher, I mean, that's one example here. We get some of the most broken men and women and to see them to walk in freedom. And obviously we're impacting relationships. And one other one was a gentleman who he came in on the razor's edge of a divorce. And I'm sure, obviously, in your many conversations, you've seen this in people you've talked to. We see this all the time. And I think a lot of the men, especially who come in, think, I put on this piece of metal, it's going to solve all my problems.
Right.
But in fact, it becomes like Lord of the Rings. It becomes the one ring to bind them all and bring them into the darkness, because we're dealing with a real person. Well, this is just about 3 or 4 months into the work he was doing. He had a long time going through here. And this is what she wrote. She said, months have passed since I last wrote, because she wrote in the very beginning, this is hopeless. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. This is what she said. Months have passed since I last wrote, but it's been on my heart to reach out and express my sincere gratitude for your program. And this, by the way, this was one of Steve Motel's clients, who, by the way, was on the Theology of the Body channel with you, Christopher. Beautiful interview. Please go check that interview out. Profound interview. And she says this, the coaching my husband is receiving has been life-changing. It is difficult to find the words to explain how God has brought such beauty, grace, and healing to our marriage. Thank you for the incredible work you're doing. The world needs this guidance, light, and peace. What an honor. Check this out. It's been to witness my husband experience true freedom and leave a cage that has ensnared him for the majority of his life. I see a man living with happiness, laughter, and joy. This directly impacts his ability to father lovingly, lead our family to Christ, and grow in sacrifice. Thank you, and keep up the good and holy work.
Wow.
Praise God.
Awesome. You know, Steve, as I'm hearing you talking about gratitude as the antidote to that acronym BLASTED, and walk me through one more time. What's the B?
Bored, lonely, hungry, there's an H, apathy, anger, stressed, tired, turned on, emotional, depressed.
Okay, so I'm feeling right now, like every year, this time of year, I get what I call the Christmas blues. It's like this funk that descends upon me of stress and anger, and it's connected with just the hustle and bustle of the Christmas season. It's connected with the end of the year. It's connected with all kinds of things about myself that I don't even understand. And my wife and I were just chatting this through yesterday, because I'm kind of preparing myself for it. It inevitably happens. There was some stress with the Christmas tree yesterday. I was putting the lights up, and needles were just falling everywhere. Like this tree, I just bought it a few days ago, and it's like
a Charlie Brown Christmas tree.
Well, yes. Well, it's already dead, and needles are falling off everywhere. And I tested the lights before I put the lights up, and they were working. And then I put them up and I plug them in, and a whole string of lights not working. And I am, this just taps. It's a trigger for deep places in my life of anger and I don't know, pain of some sort I don't even understand, shame of some sort I don't even understand, and it comes out in anger. And so right away, as I'm hearing you talking about gratitude as the antidote to anger and stress, I started being grateful for various things about Christmas, and immediately, like, my shoulders start to loosen up. The stress in my neck just starts to dissipate a little bit as I think about the gratitude. I mean, what are we celebrating at Christmas? We're celebrating the mystery of a God who took flesh to redeem our flesh. Christmas is the revelation of the full glory of the male and female human body. And pornography is anti-Christmas. It's the attack against the very mystery of Christmas. It's the attack against the reality that divine love is communicated in and through the human body. So if I can, I want to say I'm grateful to you right now, Steve, to help me deal with my own Christmas blues and enter into a posture of gratitude for what the mystery of Christmas really is. And maybe with an attitude of gratitude, I cannot stress out so much about my tree that's already dying, even though I've only had it for a few days. So thank you for that.
Two comments.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Two comments. A, did you have a camera in my house? Because my wife literally is complaining about the same thing. We got cheap and went to Walmart and bought our tree. My wife's not so sure we're going to ever do that again. That's the first thing. Second, let's do something with anger. This is kind of fun. Okay, Christopher, just for a moment, can you feel a little bit of anger?
Oh, sure. I don't have to go too far to feel it. Yeah, Okay, now, there's a volcano in there.
Okay. So in a really angry voice, say bubbles.
Oh.
I win. Can't do it. It's impossible. Nobody, unless you have a cat named Bubbles who just crapped the bed. Dang it, Bubbles. You can't do it, right? So, one of the main, and this is another thing we teach clients, and a lot of the work that we do with clients, and this is good for anyone, right? It's that awareness of what am I thinking? Where's my head at? And what am I feeling? And where am I feeling this in my body? Which again, proves the point of theology of the body being very real. We are integrated human beings. Where am I feeling this in my body, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the major tools we have that we forget, especially when we're in those tense situations with our in-laws or the tree just went down and I'm a failure, right? That's the message that we're receiving when all the meals are coming off. Laugh. We've got to laugh. We've got to be humorous. And if we think of Dante, it's a divine comedy. But we at times are so focused on this little moment that we blow it out of proportion. So this Christmas time, right, I encourage all of us, and I got to speak to myself on this, right, because I know those moments. God knows, and I can get my wife on this if you want to hear the stories of realizing, right, the old phrase, right, don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. How do we get there? It's gratitude. And if you got to use bubbles, use bubbles. Smile. Right. And also, here's a ridiculous one, Christopher. Here's a ridiculous one. Wiggle. Literally. Get the wiggles going in here. True story. I had a ridiculous conversation with my wife. It was an argument. I'm like totally at fault here. And my wife's making something in the kitchen. And I'm like, I just want to win. I have to win. And she's ignoring me. She's like, whatever. So it pops in my head, wiggle in the kitchen. So I roll my eyes at myself and I start wiggling around the kitchen, trying to just staying engaged with the conversation. And within a minute to a minute and a half, everything shifts. I realize I'm a moron. I'm so sorry. Can we start over? And the entire day totally shifted and it was a great day. So the more we can get in touch with our heart, get in touch with our body, to feel those things, to bring gratitude in there and laughter, and obviously bring God into that conversation where, all right, Father, I'm feeling this. What do you have to say about this? The more that we do this, the more we're able to love ourselves, to be gentle with self, and then we can be gentle with others. And I think this is especially because of the wounds of sexuality. This all comes home here. There's the condemnation that comes because we're told before we get into that situation, if you don't have this, you'll be alone. You deserve it. You need this. You have to have it. Your wife's not giving this to you. And then we go and enter into what is the violation of the law of the gift, the violation of ourselves and others. And then we're hit with that wall of shame by condemnation, by the evil one. You're not lovable. Look at what you've done. You're a failure, blah, blah, blah. They're all lies. And so it's instead come back to the truth of who you are, receive this love. And then what happens is miracles happen. And we see it every day in Freedom Coaching.
That's where I'm reminded of that quintessential line in the book of Genesis. I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself. Right? When I'm feeling this pain and this shame and this anger, I don't want to be seen because I'm afraid it makes me unlovable. So I hide. I want to just go in my room. I want to just close the door. I want to, or if I'm in the kitchen and everybody's around, I don't want to be seen. So I put on a mask of some kind. And I know in my own journey that no healing comes in hiding. No healing is to be found in hiding. The journey of healing here, of all of my wounds, comes by the willingness to make myself naked in the presence of love. It has to be, because only love can cast out that fear. I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself. And there's another line in that Genesis text that just recently leapt out to me within the last year or so. It first says, I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid. And that's a mysterious line. When you think about the biblical meaning of the garden, right? So the lover in the Song of Songs describes his wife as a garden enclosed, right? The garden is a symbol of the womb. The garden is a symbol of the innermost mystery of woman. Now, hear this line in light of the mystery of Christmas, right? In light of the mystery of God taking flesh in a woman's garden, right? In the womb of Mary. Adam says to the Lord, I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid. I think this is it's not part of, it really is the deepest mystery of woman's sexuality. That woman's body was designed by God to be the garden that welcomes God into his creation. And I think deep in the soul of a man, he intuits the mystery that God is present in the garden. In other words, God is present in the inmost mystery of woman. There's a line in the Old Testament, I forget which prophet, Isaiah or Zechariah, or one of the prophets says that, where the Lord says, I will dwell in your midst. And that word that we translate into English, midst, in the original Hebrew is also indicative or related to the word womb. The whole mystery, the whole focus, the whole crux, the center point of Christian faith is the incarnation. It's the mystery of God in the womb of a woman, God in our midst, God in the garden. And Adam, initially, before sin messed it all up, that's exactly what he was attracted to in the mystery of woman, the mystery of God in her midst, God in her garden. But something went wrong with sin where, oh crap, now I'm afraid of encountering this divine mystery in the garden. So I hide. That's porn. Porn is an attempt to have sexuality and kick God out of it. I don't want God in this garden. I don't want God part of this. I want my own private little pleasure, and I'm going to hide because I heard you in the garden. It made me afraid. I don't like that, and I just go into this world of my own making. Christmas, and this, I'm saying this because I need to be pulled out, admittedly, of my own, little dark cloud that I get into during this season. For it's more I don't even like to call it the Christmas blues, because it's not Christmas. It's all the trappings of Christmas that make me stressed. But the mystery of Christmas itself is precisely the mystery of God in the garden. God is in the garden. God is in our midst. He has come to us right in our fear, right in our shame, right in our pain, right in our anger, right in our stresses. And I'm saying this because I need to hear it. And that knowledge of that presence of love in the midst of our crap, that love can cast out my fear. That love can transform my anger into gratitude. I believe that. And Steve, I commend you because I know that this is what you're doing in freedom coaching. But any thoughts on what I just shared there about, I heard you in the garden and I was afraid?
So much here, Christopher. The word that is screaming in my ears is rest. Come rest in me. Come be present. Like we're all supposed to go into the womb of the church. That's where we start as Christians. We're baptized. We go into the womb there. We're to be birthed there. But in a certain sense, we're not supposed to leave. Why? Look down about, 2 feet, and there's this little hole in your belly. We're connected. That belly button, right? It shows that we're connected. And I think a lot of us try to cut that off. And then we get ourselves into trouble like the prodigals, where we want to take control of this because of a perceived lack, or maybe it was a wound from the church, or somebody said something wrong in religious ed or marriage prep or whatever, that we're going to close our heart there. And the piece that also is coming up here is 1 John 4:18. You kind of said, and I want to hit it here and then draw something that John Paul says: perfect love casts out all fear. Right. And I think it's the old Kellogg's cornflakes commercial. There was it said underneath, taste it again for the first time. We need to come back to Christmas. And I think in all that you mentioned, the trappings and all the things I got to get done, and Christmas lists and cards and all these things, where is our preparation? Are we taking time, just 5 minutes of just quietness? Light a candle after the kids go down for bed. If you're a parent, light a candle and just be still. You don't have to say anything. There's no rote prayers. Just come back there and whatever is being welled up there, have an honest to goodness conversation here. And that's a moment of safety that the Father's calling us back to. Even after Adam and Eve made that faulty call, a faulty choice, they're still called in here. And this is from John Paul in Love and Responsibility. He said, especially when he's in this discussion about nakedness. And again, this connects with our discussion on pornography, where the problem is not the body. The problem is not nakedness or attraction. The problem is lust. And the body itself being exposed appropriately can bring a bunch of healing, but we have to be metaphorically naked with ourselves and naked before God to receive this love. And John Paul says this is how it must be. He's talking about marriage, but I would say in life, for where there exists the objective conditions, get this, Christopher, for the genuine absorption of shame by love. I like to think of Bounty, the paper towels, where there's a spill in the ad and then a paper towel is put down and it goes, Bounty, right? This is in the presence of genuine love, where there's no condemnation. There's only reception. And how do we know this? Christmas. The super spiritual God takes on a body to be with us, to not just give us an example that, then I think this is where some Christians think I'm supposed to just follow the example of Christ. No, he wants to live in us, to empower, to imbue our flesh with supernatural grace to love as he loves. But we can't do that unless we first, unlike Adam and Eve, who made the faulty choice, did not run to the Father. We run to the Father and say, yes, fiat, I come to receive. And the perfect one who does that, Mary.
Awesome. I'm reminded here, Steve, of John Paul's reflection on the book of Revelation, where he talks about these two feminine figures in the book of Revelation. One is Jerusalem, right? What is Jerusalem? Why is that a symbol of woman? The holy city, the dwelling place of God. Well, Mary is the dwelling place of God. If Christmas is real, then woman's body has become heaven on earth. Woman's body has become the dwelling place of the Most High God. That's the symbol in the book of Revelation of Jerusalem, right? The holy woman, the bride, the wife of the Lamb, right? But John Paul says in the book of Revelation, there's this other feminine figure. He calls this a furious feminine figure, and this is Babylon. Babylon is the great whore, the harlot, who mocks Jerusalem, right? Both have a certain allure. Both can draw us in, but Babylon uses her beauty to woo or to seduce into destruction, right? It's a bait and switch. She draws us in with her beauty only to decapitate us, to kill us, to destroy us. But Jerusalem, the beauty of Jerusalem, draws us in to give us life and life to the full. John Paul says, how do we tell the difference between these two feminine figures? And he says, Babylon chooses barrenness. Babylon uses her beauty, as I said, to seduce, but it's not to bring life. It's a barren desert of death and ultimately our own destruction. Whereas Jerusalem is life-giving. The bride in the book of Revelation is pregnant. And this is the key, right? And I want to come back to what we were saying earlier, that we overcome evil with good. If we find ourselves attracted to Babylon, to that seduction of porn, right? Porn, I would say, is how Babylon is manifested in our world today. What we're really looking for, what we really desire, I'm utterly convinced, I feel it deep in my bones, I know it to be true. When the deception of Babylon is unmasked, and I discover the truest, deepest desire and yearning of my heart, I am yearning precisely for the beauty of woman because deep in my soul, I intuit this is where I will encounter God. Because the mystery of woman in its fullness is that she is the dwelling place of God. She is the place of the incarnation. If I go the whole way into the mystery of what woman is, I will discover the Lord in her midst. If I can be direct here, if I can be frank, if I can kind of say it like it is, which is rare among Catholics, because we don't even know how to talk about these things. We're so afraid. But what is the main image in porn that men are interested in seeing? They want to see woman's open garden, if I can put it delicately. That's what they want to see. Why? The devil doesn't have his own clay. All he can do is take the true, the good, the beautiful, the holy, and twist it up, distort it, mock it, right? Untwist that pornographic image. And we have the image in the book of Revelation of the bride about to give birth. Right? It says it right in the book of Revelation that the dragon wants to devour the child the moment it is born. Okay, so where's the mouth of the dragon? The mouth of the dragon is gaping open right at the open gates of woman's garden. That's where the war is. That's where the battle is. Are we able to see the mystery of woman's body as the mystery of the temple? How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord, mighty God. Wonderful things are said of you, O Jerusalem, O dwelling place of the Lord, O holy city of God. I would rather one day in your courts, O Lord, than 1,000 elsewhere. One thing I ask, this alone I seek, to dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. I can think of psalm after psalm after psalm, and this is one of my favorites. Happy are those in whose hearts are the roads to Zion. What is Zion? It's the mountain where the temple is, What's the temple? It's the dwelling place of the Lord. Where is this fulfilled? It's fulfilled in Mary's body. Her holy, sacred, glorious temple is the dwelling place of the Lord. Happy are those in whose hearts are the roads to this glorious mystery of God revealed through the feminine mystery of Mary, right? God taking flesh in Mary. This is what we're really looking for. And if we're not following those roads to Zion, to Jerusalem, if we've been deceived that God doesn't want to really satisfy those deep yearnings of our hearts, then we're going to take our desires to Babylon, right? We're going to follow roads in our hearts to Babylon, and Babylon is going to eat us up and spit us out and destroy us. The solution is to recognize that Babylon is a mockery of something profoundly holy, sacred, and glorious that truly corresponds to the deepest yearning of my heart. And this, I need to hear it again and again myself. This is what we're celebrating at Christmas, right? What is a man's body? A man's body is the living icon of God's desire to enter his creation, to enter the garden of creation. That's what the man's body is designed to do. What is a woman's body? A woman's body is the living icon of the creature's desire to be filled with all the fullness of God. Both of those desires, the desire of God to enter his creation and the desire of the creature to be filled with all the fullness of God, both of those desires are super abundantly fulfilled in the mystery of Christ dwelling in the womb of Mary, in the mystery of Christmas. That's what we're celebrating. Steve, pray for me, brother, that in the midst of my Christmas funk or the trappings of Christmas funk, pray that I would be grateful for that mystery of God entering his creation through the garden that is Mary. This is our salvation from all of the distortions of Babylon, the pornographic distortions of Babylon. And I'll say one more thing, and then I'll let you share any final thoughts that you have. It says in the book of Revelation that the distortions of Babylon collapse in 1 hour, right? The whole pornographic edifice is a lie. It's founded on a lie, and it cannot stand. It will collapse. And what will happen? The world will see the beauty of Jerusalem come down from heaven as a bride adorned for her bridegroom. This is where history goes. This is where history goes. And I want to speak directly to our listeners. Are you trapped on those roads towards Babylon? How can you make a change of direction from heading towards Babylon instead to head towards the heavenly Jerusalem embodied in this whole mystery of Christmas, of the bride, Mary, having conceived eternal life and bearing it forth? This is the mystery of Christianity. This is the mystery of the theology of the body. And I invite you, please, check out the link in the description to this video where you can get 3 free sessions from our Theology of the Body 1 course. Just dip your toe into these 3 free sessions about the theology of the body. Hopefully you'll want to take the whole course and immerse yourself in this glorious vision. And I invite you to sign up. We also have in the description here a link to Freedom Coaching. Please sign up. Steve, tell us about it. Don't you offer an initial session or consultation for free? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Christopher. Just one comment on everything you said, because I think if we don't comment on it, I think we're missing a line from Father Brian Bransfield that's screaming in my ears. That one of the things I put in my book called Redeemed Vision said the meaning of life is not to acquire pleasure quickly, but it's to give beauty slowly. And in the heart of every man is this desire to want to give of himself to be fully received. And I think this is especially the false counterfeit is presented. The women that are there, they think or get programmed thinking they're going to receive, but at the end of that day, end of that action, whatever, it's bankrupt. And that's why we feel so empty, right? So that's why I say to all the men, an increasing number of women, do not settle. Do first and foremost tap into, feel the thirst, feel the ache. It's okay to feel that, but then don't settle. Go to where it will actually satisfy. There is fresh water. There's a way to actually satisfy this deep, deep thirst in us. So that's what we do in Freedom Coaching. And one of the things that to offer to all listeners is a partnership, shall we say, with the Theology of the Body Institute. We want to offer you there's a free meeting with one of our very trained, very talented coaches. We want to hear your story to begin that journey. If you feel this is good, then as you begin that journey, because we like to eat, this is a way of we pay our bills as coaches. When on that first paid meeting, we're going to be able to give back to the Theology of the Body Institute, which also then they use those funds for scholarships to help those who want to come as well. So, and if you obviously please support the Theology of the Body Institute. If you feel called to donate there, please do that. But we also do have a foundation because we offer scholarships as well for those who do need it, on a case-by-case basis to be able to help them. And if you're looking also, just like with Theology of the Body Institute, looking for speakers on these very important topics, we know a lot of people are hurting, especially in parishes. The issue of pornography and the ramifications of this in the pornified culture is decimating pretty much every parish. We've talked to so many priests. We know that this is the number one sin confessed in the confessional, but there's been, in my take, I think 8 homilies in my whole life, 5 have been online. This is an issue that needs to be talked about, needs to bring it out healthily in a wholesome way into the light so there can be healing. And when we do this, when we're real with ourselves, guess what? The bride of Christ gets healed, and that's where that bride, in the book of Revelation, that bride will shine with glory.
Steve, I'm just noticing what's right behind your head. Can you step aside so our viewers can see that painting behind you? There it is, baby.
This up, shall we?
Yeah, it is.
Here it is. And one thing, let me see if I can kill my light a little bit. So this is an image. Actually, it was a client who I saw this behind his head. And I'd seen this before. I'm like, I want one. He's like, you want one? I'll send you one. Praise the Lord. I always receive more from clients than I give typically. And from this, it's obviously the most apparent one to a lot of people is when Peter, he begins to fall and he calls out, "Lord, save me." And Jesus does. He reaches his hand into the water. And I think that's absolutely true. But through my time of contemplating this, I see Christ perhaps, just perhaps, Christopher, he's in the water. He is calling us to drink deeply, to dive deeply into this. And that doesn't drown us in death, but shall we say we are getting drowned in life and life unto eternity, that what really, truly satisfies us.
Brothers and sisters, if you are sinking, cry out, and he will reach out his hand to pull you up and out. And if we can be of service at Freedom Coaching or at the Theology of the Body Institute, please, we want to be there for you. Steve, thank you so much for this conversation today. My prayers for you and your family for a beautiful, blessed Christmas. Please pray for me and my family for the same. We'd be grateful. God bless you, brother.
I certainly will keep you, your family, and the tree in my prayers.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.